All right. Hi, everybody. I think we're going to get started. It's 12:02, and I want to be very conscientious about everyone's time because we have a really great speaker today, and I want to get to him. And so first off, we are recording today. I've had a lot of requests for this meeting to be recorded. So please know that that is happening. And then before we get started, I would like to announce that this is actually going to be my last community of learning. I am leaving my role at Act on Alzheimer's, and I am going to be working for the VA and getting to do my the work that I've really been trying to get to with veterans. So I'm going to be leaving the city, and it's a very difficult decision to make because I love this work and the people I work with, both internally and externally, very much. But that being said, the important work must continue. So until they get someone else assigned to be organizing this, I've got people on this end here at Trellis that are going to be sending out the links and the information. We have June and July set up already. And my dear friend and colleague, Colleen Fritsch, is going to be guest hosting and doing the next two meetings for sure. So thank you for that. So now I want to introduce today's speaker, Greg Lenn. And Greg is going to talk to us about primary progressive aphasia. And I am really looking forward to him sharing what's going on and with him and his diagnosis and his journey with primary progressive aphasia. And I would be remiss if I did not shout out Marie Hulava, who is his friend and colleague down there in Pine Island, who's going to act as wingwoman today. So with that, please take it away, Greg and Marie.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for giving me this chance to talk about primary progressive aphasia. And the images that you see up on the screen right now are simply what I'm using. As I get into PPA and what it entails, you'll realize that I have lost virtually completely my ability to read. And so the images you see in front of you are what I'm using to navigate my way through this entire presentation. All right, I'll just be doing it with pictures, and I'll stumble across a couple words that I'm hoping Marie will be able to help me out with. Okay, so as you said, I'm Greg Lenn. I'm going to tell you just a little bit of my background first before I get into the diagnosis and what life has become for me now. I was born right here in southeastern Minnesota. In fact, the school that we're presenting this from is the one I graduated from about 41 years ago. And so it's kind of fun to be back here. After graduation, I went into the military. That's why I thank you very much for what you're going to be doing with the veterans right now. I am grateful for that. I served in the military, and then after that in the National Guard. I was in a missile unit in Germany and spent most of my time there. And then in the National Guard served as a combat medic, okay, for a number of years. After that, I had enough money to go to college. So I went to college and became a teacher. And that was the greatest decision of my life. It's always a hope when you go into a profession that you like what you're doing. And in all honesty, I loved what I was doing. I spent 30 years in the classroom, and I taught primary students mostly. I taught second grade, third grade, fourth grade. In addition to that, I served as in an administrative role for a while. But prior to signing the contract for that, just literally before I signed it, I said, what if, what if I miss the classroom so much and I want to go back? And they said, let's write it in right now. So they wrote it in the contract. And shortly after I did that, I did a year of it, and I missed the kids in the classroom so much, I went back into the classroom. But it was a good experience. I wanted to prove to myself that you can still create relationships with students, even though you're one layer removed from them in the office. Okay. During that time that I was teaching primary grades, on the weekends and at night, I was teaching graduate school. I taught for St. Mary's University at Winona, St. Mary's out of the Twin Cities, and then I taught online for the University of Wisconsin in River Falls. So I kept busy during that time. In addition to that, I also, all these things just kept presenting themselves because I loved education. They kept falling in front of me. I did motivational speaking for teachers across Minnesota, Wisconsin, South Dakota, and just to honor, what teachers are doing on a daily basis. Okay. Now, shortly after my 29th year in education, my wife and I are traveling out west, and we loved hiking in the mountains. And we came across a placard, and this is one of my first memories as I get into PPA now. And we stopped to read one of the placards at the side of the trail. And I'm reading it, and my wife read it and walked away. And I said, wait a minute, are you done reading that already? And she said, yeah, I'm done. I said, okay. I didn't really piece anything together other than the fact that I thought I was a pretty good reader, and she finished up so much before I did. And so I just dismissed it and didn't think much about it. Later that summer, just before school was starting, I ran in a race. It's a 200-mile running race that's done as a team. And on your route, you come across little signs that tell you which way to go and a little bit about how many miles you have yet to go. And I got to signs that I couldn't read. And I didn't want to stop because that's into your time, of course, as a runner. So I wouldn't stop. I just said, well, I'll figure it out. I hope I don't go the wrong way. But that was kind of a second piece that I had to tuck away in the back of my mind as to, I wonder what's going on here. In the classroom, I would be reading with the kids, and sometimes I'd come across a word that I should have known, but I would have to stop and I'd have to decode it myself along with the kids. And finally, I thought something is wrong. Something's wrong here. And so I made an appointment with my primary and went in to talk to him initially. And one of the first things he said was, well, I'm going to have to move you on to a neurologist and neuropsychologist for more diagnosis of this. But I don't know, a lot of what you're saying kind of rings true for those with MS. And I paused for a moment because both my oldest and my youngest sisters have MS. And so that would make sense if that was the case, So I kind of was forwarding on to other appointments, thinking in the back of my mind, it could very well be MS. And how am I going to navigate my world with that new diagnosis? Okay. So I went through a battery of tests. So many that I'd like to go into detail about them, but there was such an abundance of testing that I had to go through that it was overwhelming at times. Most of which were, one of the questions that they posed to me was, how long does it take light to go from the sun to Earth? Shoot, I knew that one day in physics, I'm sure, but I don't remember. And I looked at the nurse and I said, do people really have that as just common knowledge? She said, not always, but sometimes they ask for a pen and paper. I thought, well, you give me a pen and paper, I'll draw a picture of the sun and draw a picture of the earth and a line that goes between the two. But I can't tell you, what it is off the top of my head. One of the other tests that they gave me that really stands out in my mind was he gave me just a list of papers and said, can you read the, let me rewind that. He gave me a list of words on a piece of paper that said, can you read these as quickly as you can? I said, sure. So I read through them and knew that I was slow in the process, but I got to the end and he said, okay, I'm going to stop you there. you're in the first percentile. And that was another pause for me, the first percentile. I should have kept my receipt from my master's degree because I can't even read now. I can go cash that in and get my money back for that. But you know, that was just the test, and it was a 2-day set of tests that I went through. On the last day, my wife and I went into the office to talk with the neuropsychologist, and he was going on, and he goes, "Okay, and your diagnosis is primary progressive aphasia." Okay, I never heard of it, didn't know anything about it. I said, okay. And he's going on about language. And he said, yeah, what's going to happen is it will manifest itself initially through, it could be reading, it could be speech. I said, okay, I'm just still kind of trying to wrap my head around all the changes that are being shared with me. And in his talk, he said, yes, it falls under the category of dementia. And when I heard that, I was gobsmacked, to be honest with you. I sat there and I'm wrapping, all I could hear was dementia, dementia, dementia. And my dad had Lewy body dementia and passed away 7 years ago after battling that for 7 years. And so these neurological things are not uncommon in my family. So I, though, wasn't quite ready to hear that diagnosis. And so I just paused, and my wife looked over at me, her name's Karen. And she could see that I was staring off and not responding. So she gracefully jumped in and took over the conversation, was asking questions and giving me a chance to wrap my own brain around this word dementia that he threw out. Now, we're driving home from that what's the word I want? Appointment. Thank you. And we're trying to figure this out. Now, I am grateful. My wife and I have been married 35 years. And I could not express to you how grateful I am to have somebody who helps me navigate my world day after day. And I looked at it, I said, you know, that for better or for worse is about to get worse. So thank you for being with me. We will journey this together and we will navigate our daily lives together. And so we tried to figure out, okay, what does this mean for us? The next day I had school and so went into school the next day. And the very first thing I did was I pulled the principal out and I said, here's the story. Yesterday I was diagnosed with dementia. And I told her what, primary progressive aphasia, what it entails. And she said, okay, we'll meet after school with the superintendent and somebody from the business office was there as well. And so we all sat down after school that day and came to the conclusion that this was the end of my 30-year career. And it was hard. It was hard. It was something that I loved doing, and I wasn't quite ready to give it up, especially like that, just ending your career now. Now we were just going into Christmas vacation at that time. And so they said, here's our plan. Let's come back after Christmas. But we have just 2 days, Thursday and Friday, when we come back, the first week back. And let's let that be your goodbye to your students. And I said, yeah, let's do it. That sounds like a good plan. So over Christmas, I went in and cleaned out all my things. I met with the long-term sub that was going to take over for me. And within 2 days, I brought my career to a screeching halt. It was a challenge, but my head was wrapping around so many things that I really didn't have time to think about it. The picture you see in front of you where the boy is hugging me is one, and I'll never, well, I shouldn't say I'll never forget it because I probably but he gave me a hug and he simply said, I don't want you to go. And my response was, and I don't want to go. But I will keep in touch with you. I will, you just go on being you and go on to do great things. But it was a challenge. Those 2 days were the longest and the shortest days of my career. Just having to say goodbye, especially with second graders, because how do you explain to them dementia? how do you explain to them that I can't read or I'm losing my ability to read? And so I just said, guys, I've had a number of appointments, as you know, this fall. And the doctor said, it's time. You've had a good career. You've had a fun career. You've enjoyed it. It's time to step aside now. Let somebody else. That's how I presented it to the second graders. And it was okay. They got it. We had a good couple days together. And as a matter of fact, tomorrow I'm presenting this lesson to them as fifth graders now. I haven't seen many of them at all. And I wanted to go in and say, I'm okay. I'm okay. I want to explain to them what the situation is, explain to them, I don't care how hard you struggle as a reader. You're better than I am. Don't give up. You can get better. I can't, so use that and take off with it and just enjoy it. And also the other thing that I try to fold into this whole presentation with kids is don't let things stand in your way. Don't ever let somebody stand in your way. You be you and don't worry about these other things. And I try to look at it through my perspective where time is not on my side. I don't have time to waste, worrying about something that I have no control over. And I try to present it in that way to the students as well. Looking at my notes, I have no idea what they say. So I'm going to ask Maria if she can just tell me this top line here.
Research.
Oh, okay. So when I left on that day after meeting with the neuropsychologist, he really didn't tell me much about this. He said you have primary progressive aphasia and it impacts language, but that was about the extent of it. Now, keep in mind that there are only 60,000 people in the United States that have this. And so it's not like I can just, go to the local, forgive my word retrieval problem, but I'll get through. I can't just go to the hospital and say, hey, do you have a support group for PPA? It just doesn't exist. And so I had to do my own research about this to find out what does it entail? What can I expect? What's the life expectancy? Something I'm curious about as well. And there just was very limited information. I've had a number of neurologists and neuropsychologists that I've worked with over the last 4 years. Not one of them has had a patient with this. So it just is, it's an open book that you're opening yourself and trying to figure out. There are some books out there, and it's come to light a little bit in just the last few months because the actor Bruce Willis, Bruce Willis was diagnosed with what I'm assuming is the very same thing. They initially called it aphasia, frontal lobe dementia, all of which kind of lean into the fact that this is probably what it is. So it's really gotten some press from that. Now, there was a book that I had read. There was actually a support group that I found on Facebook. And I'll be very honest with you. I thought, oh, this would be great. There's a support group that I can get in touch with and reach out to people and find out their experiences. And I went one time on the Facebook site and found a number of things that I really didn't want to know. I won't go into details, but they had pictures of people and it's great. I mean, I'm glad that's out there, but I didn't want to know about that right now. I'll worry about that when the time comes. For now, I'm going to get busy living. Okay. What's the next one?
Own research, but can't read.
Okay, yeah. So that presents its own set of problems when you're trying to do your own research, but you can't read, right? So what I would have to do is do the audio version of everything I could find. Talk about finding a good time in history to have PPA is with audible books. It is. I love to read, and this is a godsend to me. I love to just get lost in my work. Now, the screen that you see up right now, I'll move to, and this is just some of the things that I had to come to terms with. Now, I have a daughter who she'll be 30 years old on her next birthday. And she was getting married the summer after my diagnosis. And I've done a number of weddings for people, and I knew that she wanted to ask me to do it, but didn't know if I could do it, or she didn't want to put me on the spot to put me in an uncomfortable situation. But finally she did it. She said, Dad, would you be willing to do the service for me or for us? And I said, I would be honored. And that's when I first discovered that I can create a talk or a presentation based on just using pictures. And so that's how I navigated my way through the ceremony. And it worked for me. It's just a matter of looking at the pictures and truly, I can't go through and even practice this. In fact, this morning, my wife said, did you go through and practice what you're going to talk about today? I said, I didn't, because it won't do me any good. You know, I can practice it and go through it, and I'm not going to remember what I practiced this morning. It's just not there. So I just have to find different ways to do it. So that is the wedding went fine. I'm grateful for that. And she's a nurse, so she understands the reality of this and helps me kind of go through things. I honestly didn't go through a time where I was in mourning or depressed over this. For whatever reason, I'm okay with it. If this is my journey, it's not what I've written for myself, but I'm okay with it. And well, to be honest with you, I don't have any other choice. So I just have to be okay with it. And my wife, journeys this with me each day as well. Now, there are a couple things that I want to share with you. One thing is, and I hope no one's offended, but I use humor in my life, and especially with this, I'm okay laughing at it. And my wife is okay with me laughing at it. And then together we find things that they can be funny. But there are also some weird things with us. And let me share just a couple of those with you. Wheel of Fortune periodically. Well, by periodically, I mean most every night. And as we're watching it, I can oftentimes solve the puzzle when there are letters missing. But when all the letters are there, I have to ask my wife what it says. It's fascinating. I mean, I don't get it. But it works. Here's another real strange thing too. I have not lost my ability to write. I can still write, but I can't read what I just wrote. So it's bizarre. It is, but nonetheless, I look at it through the lens of an educator, and I've had students that struggle with reading, and I've often wondered, well, why is it that I can give them a word when they're stuck on it, and then 3 sentences later, they come across the same word and they don't have it? And I always thought, what is it? How can you lose it between here and there? Well, I don't know if I can relate directly to them, but to me, the word doesn't look the same. It doesn't appear the same. The letters look different. In order for me to kind of give you an idea of what it's like to navigate a world without reading, I always ask the students, think about your typical day. What do you read? What do you have to read to get through a day? And they come up with several, but I'll add to what they didn't come up with. For example, well, have you ever been to a restaurant and you don't know which one's the men's room or the women's room? A number of times, especially if they try to come up with cute names, for restrooms and in different public settings, that throws me off. And I either have to wait for somebody to go in or come out, or ask my wife. She's really good about it. She said, okay, it's down here. It's a second door on the left or whatever. During COVID protocols at stores, when you would see them on the windows as you're walking into the door, I was lost. There's nothing I could do. I had gone to pick up a prescription at the pharmacy, and they had tried this prescription with me. This drug that was used for dementia, but the side effects were worse than the actual what's the word I want? The actual disease. Yeah, or what is it experiencing? Yeah. And so I went to the pharmacy to cancel it. And I said, yeah, I'm here to cancel my prescription. She goes, okay, let me pull it up. Which one is it? So I said, I hope you appreciate the irony in this, but it's for dementia. I can't remember the name of it. So she laughed and just said, thanks for letting me off the hook. So it's things like that just are hard. Now, I was oftentimes following when COVID was going across the world, I'd often see where the hotspots were in the world, but it's on the news, and I couldn't make out what the country was. I'd sometimes try to navigate by looking at the countries, in what part of the world they're in. But there was one time when I was looking at, Marie, can you help me out again with that? Belgium, thank you. I was looking at it, and in my brain, I'm thinking, I don't know what that country is, but I know it's in Europe. So I can't understand why this happened. So I can't understand what the word is. I can't say the word, but I know it, and I know where it's located. So it just is. It's utterly fascinating. As I said. You mind reading the next part of that?
Then he says you can still write it as the name implies.
Oh,
progressive.
yes, thank you. So yeah, as with primary progressive aphasia, as the name implies there, it's going to progress. And so right now I've lost my ability to read, and I would say completely. But I can still write at this point. And what I do with that is I have to take advantage of it. And so I'll pull this out. This is just one of my journals that I write, and I write to my daughter. And
Up just a little higher.
oh, okay,
There.
thanks. I write to my daughter. I was doing it daily, not quite daily now. But what I do is I just write about memories that I have of her as a child. I write about my goals for her. I write about my hopes for her and her family. And it brings me peace to do this. And then I do the same thing for my wife. I have a journal. Thank you. I have a journal that, and I keep for her too, talking about memories of different things we've done throughout our marriage, how grateful I am to have her in my life, and and it goes on and on. Now, in a matter of 1 month, I'm going to be a grandfather. And I am so grateful for that and look forward to it. In fact, we're moving up closer to our daughter in just a matter of 1 month. Okay. This will be our first child, their first child, and my first grandchild. And so what I've done for them is this. I have cards that I'm writing to them, or to her, to start off with. It's a happy first birthday. Happy second birthday, happy third birthday, happy fourth birthday, and it goes on and on. Merry Christmas. I have Christmas cards for 5 years. I have Valentine's cards for 5 years. I will go through graduation, wish them a happy graduation. I won't be there, and I'm okay with that. I just want to make sure that they know how much they're loved by their grandfather, and it brings me, like I said, just a great deal of peace to be able to do that. Right. I just jotted down a couple things that go along with, yeah, right there would be a great place. Sometimes when I'm asked a question that I'm not ready for, my brain will go completely blank. And I mentioned the one already about the prescription that's on the top picture. But after that, there's a picture of a white car, and I had taken my car in for an oil change. And they go, okay, we're here to pick up the car. Which one is yours? I'd look at her, I said, well, I didn't know there was going to be a quiz. so I just looked at it, I go, it's the one out there. She goes, would it be the white one? I go, yeah, it's the white car. It's things like that. I just I can't explain. I just have to deal with it. And oftentimes I throw out the line, did I mention I have dementia? Welcome to my world. So I had to find, what brings me peace in this whole process. As things progress, what is it that I want to do, because I may not have time to do this later. And one of the things I do is I volunteer here at school. I'm with kids, and I can't help them academically, of course, but I mentor. We've got probably 15 boys that I get together with on a regular basis. And it is just to let them know they have an adult in their corner, that cares about them and that wants them to be successful. And there's a certain way that they connect with my situation, because together we look, okay, what would you do? I'll say, if you couldn't read, or if you lose your ability to speak down the road, what would you do? I mean, I'm open for suggestions. How would you navigate this? And just to hear some of the things they come up with are really fascinating. One time they said, well, what I would do is I'd learn Braille. I said, well, it's a great idea. And I said, anything else? Yeah, I would learn sign language. It's another great idea. Unfortunately, those are all connected to the same part of your brain. And so that part, the frontal lobe part of your brain, is what's going to translate all of those different ways to communicate, and all of which would be not effective, I guess I would say. There are some fascinating things too about this PPA, and that is there are some people who are bilingual and they will lose only one language and they'll maintain the other language. German is my minor, and I'm certainly not fluent in it, but my wife and I and my daughter and son-in-law were in Germany for Oktoberfest last fall. And I can guarantee you that if that's gone too, I can navigate part of my world, but that language is gone as well as English. So let's see. There's one other. I want to make sure I have time for. Oh, so in addition to that, I wanted to look at what else can I do that brings me joy. And there are some elderly people in town that are struggling because they have physical limitations, and I go in and I sit with them, and we just talk. And there's one in particular. I don't know how it happened, but we've become best of friends. And we just are almost a support group for one another. He battles a number of things, and he knows what I'm battling, and we just talk about that, you know. And he even said one day, do you mind if we talk about dying? No, absolutely. And he wanted to, because nobody in his family wants to talk about it with him. And I said, absolutely, let's talk that. Let's, you know, what are your thoughts? What can I tell you about on my journey? You know, and so it's conversations like that have really kind of helped me, and it just keeps me engaged, and it makes me grateful. It makes me grateful to be able to do what I'm doing, and I can still talk. You know, I never thought that you could take that for granted. I never thought reading was something you could take for granted, but obviously I did. You know, but it's a journey. And I like I said, I'm at peace with it, and it's fascinating, and I'm grateful for this time to share it with you. It's oh, okay, thank you.
No, that's something.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. There's one other thing that I've learned in this whole process, and I share with students and adults all the time. It's leave nothing unsaid. When you're with people, whether, you know, even if it's a waiter or a waitress, I will pull them aside and say, you need to know that you do an awesome job. You know, you should be told that, because it was a pleasure being here, you know, having you work with us today. With my daughter, with my wife, my son-in-law, my siblings and friends, I make sure that nothing is left unsaid. You know, and isn't that a good rule anyway? You know, it shouldn't be whether you're looking at, you know, a shorter lifespan or not. You put the good out into the world that you can, and just be grateful, you know. So,
Greg, you have put so much good out into the world in the last half hour. I can't tell you what you're doing to me, but just now a message came through that said, can someone please read this to Greg? Now, this is from Becky, who's attending. She said, I'm in tears and unable to speak. Thank you for sharing your story. You are an inspiration. Your humor and humility are extraordinary. The fact, sorry, I lost that. Everybody's writing so quickly here. The fact that you are going back to the students to show them that you are okay is amazing, and will be such a profound experience for them. Yeah. At this time, I would like to open it up for questions. And also, Marie, if you have anything to add there, and Greg, you've got us all right in your palm. So feel free to continue on without,
Okay.
I mean, from your heart, that's fine. I'm not sharing the screen any longer.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. And I know there are things that I typically share that I will forget about. In fact, I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but when my wife asked me if I'd practiced, and I said, like I said earlier, it doesn't do me any good because I won't remember it, So like I said, though, we find plenty to laugh at, when we were hiking and we saw a sign, my wife said, "Hey, Greg, did you know that it's Dementia Awareness Month?" I said, I didn't know that because everybody keeps forgetting.
It's Dementia Awareness Month every day.
That's right. Every day is Dementia. And I don't mean to make light of anything. That's just how I have to navigate my world, because there are some things in here or things that go along with this that it's okay to just be okay. I'd love to, if they have questions that I can help out, I would love to answer anything as best I can that you may have.
I do know that Colleen wanted to speak up. Colleen?
If I could, just a couple of things, Greg. First of all, you might want to be grateful that we're by Zoom, because I promise you we would all be running up to you to wrap our arms around you. So thank you so much.
Of course.
And those of us who are Dementia Friends champions, every meeting, every session, we talk about the 5 key messages. And one of those 5 key messages is, it is possible to have a good quality of life with dementia. Mm-hmm. And I promise you that every one of us who is here today will think of you every time we say that. And I want to thank you for sharing your story, but also your heart with us. Mm. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I can't tell you how much I appreciate that, and truly the opportunity to be a part of this, because while I can still talk, I want to put this out there. I want to share with people, and because like when I go with and I talk with students, I'll say, how many of you have been affected by dementia, and whether it's a neighbor or a grandfather or whatever, raise your hand, and oftentimes it's half the class. That will raise their hand. I said, so you guys can relate to this. You can connect to what I'm about to share with you. Right. And so it's just good it's good for them to know that they're not alone. That they have other people they can reach out to, or and that all journeys are different. Just because one person's really in a tough situation, it doesn't mean that everybody is, or everybody's going to be there.
Yeah. Clearly, you are still an educator.
Like I said, I miss that more than I could even describe in words. But I appreciate you saying that, because this is the next best thing to being in front of kids, is to just share this with people.
Lori, you asked a good question. Do you want to share your question with Greg? Lori Paulson?
Sure. Greg, thanks so much. It's so interesting. It's fascinating to hear what your life is like. So a couple of things that came to my mind is, you said you can write. Are you able to type on a keyboard?
Absolutely. Yes, good question. I can type as if this was 10 years ago, and I can sit and type away. But if I go back to read it or to proofread it, I have to have it read back to me.
Okay.
That's how I even a text message. I can text things out, but I have that my device can you just highlight it and it reads it all back to you. All right. What a blessing that is, So yeah, like I said, it's the most fascinating thing. What I found too that helps me kind of get through a day is, if I am, give me a second here. I just lost exactly what I was going to tell you. If I'm stuck on a word that I'm trying to figure out on a sign or something like that, if I spell it out in my mind, the word will come to me eventually. Does that make sense?
Well, and so that's my other question. So when you see a word, like,
Mhm.
let's say your name, does it remind you more like an object? Like, can you recognize your name as an object on the page, or do you just see letters like you're learning how to read kind of thing?
You know, it's a great question, and it's one of the most difficult things for me to try and explain. And so I'm glad you asked it. The analogy that I would give people most often is, it would be like being in a foreign country looking at a sign when you don't know the language.
Okay.
Okay, that's the best comparison I can give you of that. You know, I mean, it could literally, now it's a 3-letter word that will throw me off. I can still drive at this point, but I can't read the signs. I don't go many places without my wife. And the signs that really kill me are those that are like the electronic signs that change their message periodically. Cancel Christmas on that one, because I am not, I don't know what's, I just hope there's not an accident that's coming up, because I can't navigate that part. That's a real challenge for me.
Great. Thank you for
Yeah,
answering those questions.
Absolutely. Thank you for the questions. Good ones. Yeah.
Oh, Greg, I think everybody's got all kinds of positive things to say. There's a hand up here. Adele, do you want to ask your question?
Yes, thanks so much for educating us. Just appreciate it. It's wonderful.
Oh, thank you.
I was wondering, since you can type, and you also say you recognize words when not all the letters are there,
Mhm.
what would happen if you type words without some of the letters? Can you read that then?
That's a great question, and I don't have an answer for you. I have not tried that. I'm going to try it though, because I don't know. So if I get stuck on a word, oftentimes I'll, you know, if the word was something as simple as car and I couldn't figure it out, I would just say, okay, then it will come to me, you know, oftentimes. It's so hard to explain, because there's not a reference point for people, you know.
Mm.
And I say that to kids all the time. I wish I could give you a point of reference so you could say, oh, I get it, it's like this, but there's not a comparison, because it's just fascinating. Truly,
Amazing.
and yeah, it really is. I mean, you always know the brain is complex, but really, you can lose that, you know. So that's kind of another angle I take with kids is, don't waste that, you know. You have the ability to read, do it, try to get better, you know. So yeah, I used to have kids. I almost am embarrassed to say this, but I love teaching so much. I'd be in my classroom at 4 o'clock in the morning, and just because I like to get ready for the day, and I was excited. Then I'd have kids coming in like at 6:30 that maybe struggled with reading, and that would give us an hour to have breakfast together and just read. And there were a number of times when I'd get a call from my wife like at 6 o'clock telling me that there's a snow day. Now, I live in Pine Island, but I taught in Prescott, Wisconsin. So that's a 50-mile drive. So she'd tell me it's a snow day. Okay, I'll be home in 2 hours, and I have to drive back to the snowstorm to get there. But I don't know, there was always a special place in my heart for kids who struggled with reading. And I worked, I did whatever I could to not only to help them, but even more so to make them okay with where they were at. You know, yeah, I get that you're struggling, but how can you be at peace about that? You know, how can you continue to work to get better, but don't beat yourself up? You know? So I know that as soon as we're done, I'm going to, I wish I would have said that. But I appreciate the questions. You have great questions to ask, and I hope that I'm, you know, able to give you what you're hoping to find out.
I have another comment. So we have a member of our dementia-friendly community here in Winona that had aphasia, but it was kind of the opposite of you, where he knew what he wanted to say, but he just couldn't get it out of his mouth.
Yep.
But he could read from a book.
Okay. Now that's interesting, because as this progresses, mine started off with reading. Others may start off with language. Okay, and as it progresses, it will be reading, language, and what am I? Reading, writing, and language. So I still have the writing piece. I still have the word retrieval is what's starting to manifest itself more and more now. Okay, I'll be in. I'm trying to come up with a word and I can't come up with it. So I don't know how this happened, but I go like this to my wife. Like, this means I'm thinking of a word. Can you help me? So what you learn to do is talk around things. Like, I was trying to come up with the word tater tot one time. Okay. And I said, oh, Karen, little fried potatoes. Okay. So you talk around it and she said, tater tots? Yes, that's it. So it sounds like a game that we play every day.
But that's what his speech therapist told him to do. Like when he couldn't think of the word apple, to use red, round fruit.
Yep.
Exactly what you're doing. That is just crazy.
Yeah. You just learn to talk around it. And for now it works, which is great. And sometimes it'll be some obscure word that I'm trying to come up with. My wife will throw out 50 different, options, and oh, that's not it either, but keep trying.
Megan Constantini, I know you had something to add. Please do.
Thanks. Hi, Greg. My name is
Hi.
Megan,
Hi,
and now
Megan.
I'm in Plymouth, Minnesota. And like Colleen and several other people on the call today, we do Dementia Friend sessions. And I will always think of you. I want to say thank you because there are so many people living a good quality of life with dementia. And the more people like you that are sharing your story, it keeps us going. And I'm going to be starting to do more Dementia Friend sessions in the city I live in. And I was thinking about Bruce Willis. So you brought up Bruce Willis, but I was thinking about how it's not good for somebody to get aphasia, but for Bruce Willis, he'll help other people understand it better. But now I'm going to put you up on the pedestal of Bruce Willis to me.
Wow.
Greg and Bruce Willis.
Yeah, that's very kind. Thank you.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
just thank you. And my mom's an educator, so just this really touched me today. And my question is, do you do other speaking engagements, or is this just kind of a one-time thing?
No, as a matter of fact, it's just kind of morphed into this. I wasn't looking for this to happen, but I love it. I mean, I did public speaking for years when I was in education, not just in the classroom, but I'd go around to different school districts. And when I taught graduate school, every day is almost a presentation or something along that line. But I love this. I love to get this out there. And truly, I want to do it while I still can.
Yeah.
And so I guess I'm looking. Opportunities seem to present themselves, and I'd love to take advantage of it if I'm able to.
Yeah, and especially with Zoom, it's really neat to connect on Zoom. So
Sure.
Maybe we'll follow up after this, or I'll talk to your wife or others on the call if we could schedule another one just to keep this.
Would love it. Yeah. Thank you. I would love that. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
With that being said, Marie, could you make sure that we maybe put in the chat a way for us to reach out to you and or Greg or his wife? If you could share a way that people could reach out to Greg, I think that would be helpful, because I think I speak for everyone when I say I don't think this should ever be a one and done. I think people need to hear this voice. This is amazing.
Yeah, great. I like I said, I would love to help out in any way I can to get the word out there, to just an understanding, just of something different. We don't always think of this in terms of dementia. You usually would think of dementia as like my dad had Lewy body, and that's kind of a classical case of what we see. But yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Question.
Jen, can I ask a question of you?
Of me, yes.
One of the first community of learnings that you ever led was led by a woman from an organization that was 100% run by people living with dementia. And all of their board members were people living with dementia. And their mission was to go out I think they were from Ohio, and their mission was to go out
Mhm.
as people living with dementia and try and change the paradigm of what people think. And I'm wondering if you could not connect Greg with that group. Who would-
Oh, Brenda Roberts. Yeah, yeah.
Dementia Minds.
Okay.
So,
Thanks.
Marie, you are
Yeah.
familiar with Dementia Minds?
Yeah.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
There's someone, oh, she got it. Okay. Sorry. I'm not very good at responding to things in the chat. I mean, and actually getting that information. So if anybody wants to send anything from the chat,
I can get my email too,
Yeah.
if anybody's interested in
which
it.
would you rather have them email you directly, or do you want to, how do you want, either way?
Yeah, whatever.
Just
I
me if
mean,
you want, I don't care.
just, why don't I, will, yeah, email might be just as helpful. I mean, that I can't read it, but I can delete things that I don't want to delete.
Can I?
Happens on a regular basis.
Message, Dementia Friend Community. I think this is it. I don't want to do this too quick. Oh,
And I can probably help too if, let's see here, because I too have Greg's email, so I could see. if
Yeah,
I
feel free to
can-
share
yeah,
that.
why don't you share it? I'm having issues here. I don't know what.
Yeah, I can do that. Hang on one
We're
second.
good parent.
Hey, it takes a village,
That's right.
and we're all doing our part. Okay, so I'm gonna put this in the chat here for everyone. So,
And I have a question or a comment question, but I don't see a hand raised here. So whenever,
I don't, go right ahead. Please go ahead, Valerie.
I was gonna try and be, usually I just barge in. I was gonna try and be subtle, but I didn't see the hand. So thank you so much, Greg, and it's Marie, right?
Yes.
This is so important. I am a health educator and a caregiver coach and family coach and all, and it's so important to hear the stories direct from the caregivers and from the people with dementia and the experiences. It's so invaluable, and we've gotten a little bit of growth with the Dementia Friends, with more and more out there now, and things have progressed in about the last 10 years. I've been doing this professionally to get the word out that it's not always Alzheimer's, it's not always memory loss, and Alzheimer's. So as a person trying to help families and people, it's always frustrating when I hear your experience about the fact that even at a specialist neurologist who, number one, thank God you got to the doctor. I don't know how long it took, but usually it takes forever, about these rare kinds. And number two, even with that specialist, you weren't really told what it meant. And,
Right, sure.
I often say what I try to do is translate the diagnosis to, for the family or the loved one, because they don't know what it means for the future. For their life, for their daily life and such. So, but number one, thank you so much, and amazing, and you have such a positive outlook and amazing approach here. I do, and I know from the other names listed here that some of us manage and facilitate support groups. And you had said your first dipping the toe in support groups, you weren't ready for certain stuff, whatever. I'm just curious about if you have gone back to the support group environment for yourself, and then also if there's any particular input either of you would have specific to PPA and as a caregiver or an individual that you would want people to know.
So, yeah, it's a great question. I'm trying to think of how I can. I'm gonna go to this. Can you rewind the last part of your question about caregivers, please?
The last part was just, anything either of you have that could contribute to people earlier in the journey than you as a caregiver or the person with PPA.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you really hit an important point, and that is they shared nothing with me or with us in terms of that. And I don't necessarily fault them. They just don't know. I mean, the only information they have on that's what they've read. They just don't. They haven't had any patience with it, and so as hard as it is, you just begin to figure out day by day. Okay, how do we navigate this? How do we figure this part out? I don't myself go to or have a support group, and I shouldn't say that because the people around me that I surround myself with daily, they are truly a support group for me. And I think that, that's why I go back to leave nothing unsaid, because I let them know exactly how grateful I am for what they do for me. And I guess I'll leave it at that. I mean, I'm not going to let them know anything other than thank you for the role you play in my world.
I think one thing that Greg has done that is maybe easier to do in a small community is he kind of created his own support group with this one gentleman where they don't have the same issues, they don't have the same disease, but he gets support from this older gentleman that he talks to, and they share, general things. I think it's really one of the things that I find in some ways interesting is, since I started just being a dementia friend back in 2015, there's now all of a sudden all sorts of new mixtures of dementia and everything, right? And it's like all these, having individual support groups for all this is in one way really needed for some people, I think, but for other people, it's just like, how can we get together and just have normal time? Because, to some of the caregivers that I've talked to, when they get a diagnosis, they say the information, it's like either they get no information or it's a fire hose coming at them, and then they have to sort through all this stuff while they're trying to navigate how their days are going to be, so I think, Greg's just kind of found his own support group with this gentleman, even though it's not, specific to the primary progressive aphasia. And, I think that it's interesting because I will tell you how I had been I've been thinking about getting in touch with Greg for quite a while. However, a 93-plus-year-old woman in this town, every time she saw me at the senior center or every time we have our memory cafe, she'd say, you need to get in touch with Greg. His mom comes here to the senior center. You need to get in touch with him, figure out how to get in touch with him because he spoke at the retired teachers luncheon. Was that what it was?
Yeah.
And she was, who was she to you?
She was my my kindergarten teacher. And so I had invited her to this talk that I was going to give to a group of retired teachers at this facility. And I said, I just thought it'd be neat to, and what I do is I talk about teaching and I talk about PPA as well. And I kind of fold the two together. And then at the end, I said, I have a special guest here I'd like to introduce you to. This is my kindergarten teacher. She was just it was such a joy, truly, to have her there and to be able to talk with her. And looking out and seeing her in the audience was just really a blessing.
Well, there aren't words to begin to thank you for sharing what you have shared with us today. And
Does
I'm
Sarah
hoping
want
to
to
read.
do her question quick?
Oh, do we have a hand up?
Sarah?
Okay.
Yeah,
Uh,
can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Greg, do you have the same experience with numerals or with symbols?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the answer is it's progressing. And right now my numbers are okay. But I can't tell you how many times a day I dial the wrong number. Met a lot of new friends that way, but I always am dialing the wrong number. And here's another piece to that too, and it kind of strays away a bit from numbers, but when a call comes in, you look at your phone to see who it is. I don't have that luxury. I look at the phone, and sometimes by the time I figure it out, they've already hung up. So it's things like that you just don't think about in terms of how many times you read throughout a given day. Even looking for a channel on TV. I can't read what show is on that particular channel, and my wife will have to navigate, or I just trial and error,
But do you see patterns in the transpositions that you make?
Patterns in the what?
Transpositions. If you're putting a sequence of numbers and they're not correct, do you see that you're doing a certain pattern with that?
Oh, I can do that now. I wouldn't wager money that it's correct, I guess is the way I would say it. I would not trust the numbers. I can put them in sequence, like for say a phone number, but if I go back to reread that, I struggle with it just like with reading, And again, that's one of the most fascinating things when you can write it, but you can't read it. It's just fascinating to me.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
Thank you. Greg, there is a message here that I'm going to read, and it says, many thanks to Greg. My partner of 25 years was diagnosed in 2020 with mild cognitive disorder. Recently, he retested, and the updated diagnosis is semantic variant primary progressive aphasia. His language is greatly impacted with much difficulty finding words. He also has memory loss and has had trouble understanding what has happened to his life. I am his primary caregiver.
That's the first, I believe, the first person that I've had directly or indirectly that has a direct connection to that. I'm sorry to hear about the diagnosis, but I'm sure grateful that you have each other to be there to support one another. And what a great thing. And I hope that the progression is slow, in his situation. That's fascinating. I've never. Thank you for sharing that, because it's so, I don't know what the word is I want to use, but to hear of someone else that's battling the same diagnosis is really something.
Thank you, Greg. I know that we could all sit here all afternoon, and I most certainly could, because I find this to be one of the most fascinating conversations I've had the privilege of being a part of in a very long time. But since we have got a time limit, I want to say two things. One, Megan Constantini, you said that Greg was up in your mind like Bruce Willis, because he's bringing attention. I think in some ways even more important, because of Bruce Willis's fame, his absence is a big message to the world, right? The fact that he's not out and we're not seeing him publicly and we're not hearing from him. In my opinion, what Greg is doing is so much more important, because he is showing us how to live with it. It's his presence that is so important, not his absence. So thank you for that. Also, Marie Hulava, you are an example to everyone in this state, and I hope people are hearing me when I say, this is why I created this community of learning, because I want you to share what's happening in your communities, what's happening in the dementia-related world with caregiving. Look at the good you've done today by shining a light on someone as special as Greg. I am leaving, but this community of learning must continue. And so if you are as energetic and fabulous as Marie Hulava, please, please, please invite people to this meeting, volunteer to lead a discussion. Next month, we have Mary Eck from Dementia Friendly America, who is going to talk about what they do and how it plays into what's happening here in Minnesota. And the following month in July, Sarah Barcel, who just shared, is going to talk about all her efforts on making dementia-friendly travel a reality through MSP and all her work on creating protocols. So the next 2 months are already set up. Create your own destiny. Share with one another the stories that you want to hear. And thank you so much.
If there's any way that I can help out with anything, or people want, information, or please let me know. I'd love to help out in any way that I can. And secondly, thank all of you truly for letting me be a part of this conversation today. I am grateful, truly grateful for that.
Yes, and thank you, Jen. Thank you, Jen, for everything you've done, and you've been a great contact for me, and I'm going to miss you. You have my email address though, so you can send me an email at your new job. And we can do that. But yeah, this is great, and I appreciate everybody that's been on this and how supportive people have been of the things that I've done with students and stuff. And I am just, I am Greg's biggest fan, actually. Anyway, well, not as big of a fan as Anita, his kindergarten teacher. She's the huge fan, but it is great, and I will tell you that the students in Goodhue that. Well over half of them said that his presentation was like a 4 or a 5 out of 5 and so that was fantastic. And they really, one of the people said, I really like hearing from someone who had dementia. So it did make a difference. And so that's great.
Perfect. Thank you. And I wrote here, if you want to speak or lead a community of learning, go to info@actonalls.org and send it in. We have people that are going to help organize these in the future. So don't hesitate to share. Okay. And I'm putting it, and yes, to your next question, everyone, this was recorded and I will make sure the link gets put out on the e-blast. Okay. Thank you all. Have a great day.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jen and Greg.
Goodbye. Thank you.